Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So today I am so excited to finally be reviewing, let me pull up the cover here, The Midnight Prince, a Cinderella retelling by Angie Grigaliunas. I'm so sorry I'm butchering your name, but it's not coming through clear, but that's the cover. It is part of the Once Upon a Prince series. This is a multi-author series, so each book is a standalone book in this series written by a different author, all about a swoony fairy tale prince retelling the story of how they get their happily ever after. Obviously, this one's a Cinderella retelling. So Angie Grigaliunas, I'm butchering the name, so I'm just going to call her Angie from now on. So Angie, the author of this book, is a friend of mine on like Facebook and stuff. I've been seeing her post for a while, and she would do these little skits and conversations between her and her characters, and I've always wanted to do them, but I was too scared because I thought people would think it was weird, and she gave me the confidence that I needed in order to try to do these skits myself, and for a while I did them, and I still write them every day. I just don't post them anymore. But that's a whole nother story. And because of this, like, I started learning more about this guy named Kieran from her books, and I just got interested, and then I saw some of her posts about this book, and I was so excited for it, and I looked it up on Amazon, and I found and I read the blurb, and I'm like, this is my kind of book, like, let's go. And then I found out it was for pre-order, and I'm like, oh, it's not coming out until October, and I'm like, dang, because this was like way earlier this summer. And basically it finally came out. I bought it and I read it. I read it in like 3 days, but this was a couple days ago. And I was like, I know I'm getting close to the end, and it's like really early in the morning, and I had already shut my computer off, and I didn't want to do another one on my phone, and I was tired, and I wanted to really have my thoughts together before I did my review, because she is a friend of mine and I do value this book. Like, not that I, in the past when I've done a review on my phone, not that I don't value the book, but I wanted to really give this more time. So I had to wait a couple days until I could finish it and actually do the review video. So I just finished it a few moments ago, and this is my review. So let's get right into this. So first of all, I love the concept of a multi-author series. I was once a part of one. It didn't work out, but I love the concept. I really want to be a part of one in the future. And so the idea of that is so cool. And then I really like fairy tale retellings. It and thrillers seem to be some of the two genres that actually do draw me into reading again, because you guys know I have trouble finishing a book. I get book blocked where I start a book and like don't finish it. So that's a thing. And then on top of that, part of what hinders me from being able to enjoy regular like fantasy books, for example, is because very few authors write the way that I do, in the sense that, like, I'm not saying that I'm a great author. I'm just saying I write the books that I want to read, and what I read is very niche, where it's like I love male characters with really tragic, really horrible, really angst and tragic, torturous backstories, where they're like going through so much. And I'm one of the few authors that I know that do that to their male characters, with a female character that I can like, with some good romantic subplots, with action and adventure and grit, as I call it, in a clean way. Every other book that I found that does this to male characters is erotica with a lot of sex in it, and I don't like that. So that's why I just continue to read my own books, because I can't find anything like that. And so that's where I'm like, okay, thrillers and fairy tale retellings are the two genres that draw me in, because, you know, I can't find the book in this kind of niche, books in this kind of niche, where the character is like brooding and he's gone through a lot and he's got a tragic past. And I love that. I'm a sucker for a male character with a tragic past. I really, really am. And I love reading my own books, but sometimes it's nice to find an author who actually genuinely writes like I do in that sense. And by golly, Angie does this so well. So, needless to say that Kieran is a prince, and he's the prince in the Cinderella story, but I appreciated all of the Cinderella Easter eggs and the Cinderella moments, but I also loved the fact that like it retold Cinderella in a new light. And like a lot of the retellings, like I haven't read too many of them, but some of them like either over focus on the fairy tale part of it, or don't really add anything new, or they add too much new where there's nothing of the original. And for me, I felt like Angie balanced this really well, where it was like a new spin on Cinderella while honoring the original fairy tale, and it wasn't so changed that you like didn't recognize it, or they changed the female character to be this strong, I don't know. It's just like it's just genuinely like a nice fairy tale retelling with a good vibe, and it gets a sense for the world. I am assuming and hoping that this world is bigger and more involved in Angie's personal projects, which I'm excited to explore. But Kieran is definitely a which I just now realized Kieran is pronounced the same way as my character Kieran from Dark Magi, who is angst, brooding, lots of trouble, troublesome father. Very similar vibes. Coincidental because I wrote that a long time ago. But either way, spelled completely different, but I think it's pronounced Kieran. But so essentially, he's got this death magic. So first of all, the world building, the race building, and the magic building was so fun. Like, I loved it. I got so sucked into the idea of the magic and how it works in this world. And the magic that he has is like this death magic and stuff, and he wasn't meant to be the king. And then I don't want to spoil anything else, even though that may be the main premise, but stuff happens. It's got a second chance romance, and I've never really read one like that, where I don't know if I've ever read that trope before. Like, I know what it is and I've heard about it, and if I have seen it, it's probably been more contemporary, but for me, it's like, I've never done that. I've never read a book with it in fantasy before, but I felt like it was done so well. Honestly, there were moments in this book where I got so many feels. I don't know if you guys experience this, but when I get feels, like when they're really heavy feels, my stomach and my insides just twist because of what the characters are going through. And for me, I crave that. I love that feeling. It may be odd and maybe you think I'm weird, but for me, I love reading that. Like, that's what I crave in a good book or in a good TV show, is give me those twisting moments where I'm reading and I really feel what the character's going through. And I haven't felt that heavy-handed gut twisting moment for a long time. Even in my own books, I haven't felt that way for a long time. Like, not heavy-handed. And I had several of those moments. There's one conversation between the characters in this book that just tore me apart. Like, I was like, I haven't felt this way. I need to breathe for a minute, because this was like gut twisting feels right and left. And the way she describes things, the way that she puts words together, like, Angie is such a good writer. And a little bit of fun fact, and I'm not trying to diss anyone here, but I've been reading a anthology, and I'm doing it for a challenge here on YouTube that'll come out probably years from now, because it's like a 40 book challenge type thing, and I'm a slow reader. And I'm not getting through it very well, but long story short, I was reading this anthology and I'm having some issues with it, and some of it's poorly written and my editor's side is coming out, and I stopped in the middle of it because I just needed to give myself a break and read something that I really enjoyed, and I switched from that to Angie's, and oh my gosh, the difference is like night and day. Like, it really emphasized how smooth like Angie's writing is, and her editing. Like, this book is so edited compared to the last one. Like, my editing brain wouldn't shut off. It was like flashing and like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, you need to fix this, and the writing needs to be tighter, and like all these things that was just so distracting from the story. Which is nothing bad against the author. It just, sometimes either you have an editor who doesn't pay attention, who doesn't know, or you didn't get an editor at all, which is understandable because who can afford these things these days? But when I read Angie's, it was like a breath of fresh air because it was so smoothly edited that it allowed me to get into the story and not get distracted with all the fluff and everything. I don't remember for sure throughout the whole book, but I remember just now reading a few seconds ago, there was one fragment, but it was written for dramatic purposes, so sometimes authors will write fragments for the sake of making it a dramatic sentence, and it's like, it's not grammatically correct and you should change it, but I understand when authors do that because it's dramatic, why not, but that was not, anything bad. And I got sucked in. I know I've said I've read this book in like 3 days, and maybe it's not been three. Like, I've said that a lot for the last, let me start that over. So I know I've said that, oh, I've enjoyed this book and I've read it within 3 days for the last like several books that I've read, but I genuinely like read through this in like 2 or 3 days. It didn't, like, other than the ending just now, but I would have finished it that night if I hadn't had time to do my review on it. I purposefully waited until I had time to do this review because I wanted to do that all at once and not wait a couple of days until I could film, because I want it fresh on my mind. And so I would have finished it quicker because of that. But I breezed through this book. I loved it. I loved it so much. Like, I honestly did not realize how much I need other books like mine in my life, but written from other authors so that it's not always like I know what's going to happen because I wrote the darn thing in a better and more interesting writing style with different ways of doing things where I can read it, enjoy it, but also kind of analyze and study the style and like learn and grow as I'm reading because every author does that when you read. And so for me, it was just so refreshing. And I cannot emphasize enough how much I enjoyed this book because of Kieran and the way that the story was written. I love the main girl character. I have a hard time connecting with girl characters the way that they're written sometimes. And so for me, she was written in a really way that really connected me with her and the writing style. And then it was so amazing to just read something so smoothly edited where I didn't have one thing or another just glaring out at me that was wrong. I didn't really catch anything, to be honest, until that fragment at the end, but that was again for dramatic purposes. So honestly, like I really don't have like I just enjoyed this book so much and it was a truly a breath of fresh air that I genuinely felt like I needed because it's hard for me to get into fantasy books because I keep thinking, okay, I would do it this way, or I want the male character to be a little bit more like this. I want things to be a little bit more gritty, and they don't do that. And if they do, it's a book about sex or it has erotica in it and things like that, which I don't like and I don't approve of and I skip over, but still. So overall, I love this book. My only complaint, and this is kind of a minor thing because I'm really nitpicking at this point because I do like to be honest about everything when I review books. But my only minor complaint was that one, it's not long enough. Honestly, I could use another book this size and just keep going with the angst and the drama and stuff, like please. So it was too short, which they may have had like a like a word count restriction. I know the one that I was going to be a part of did, so who knows? I don't know what the actual count was because I wasn't, we don't know that when we're reading on Kindle, but it was a little too short, which not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing because it means it was written so well. I want more. And then the only other complaint I had was that, and this one isn't really a complaint, but it's just the ending came really suddenly that it was just like, oh my gosh, and we're over. Wow, that was like, it was just like really quick, which again is not a complaint or a bad thing. My only complaint about it was that everything wrapped up really easily and smoothly. And there was one particular situation, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but let's just say there was one situation that was really dramatic and it was resolved to me a little too easily. And it's the genre, it's not the writer, it's not the book. Fairy tale retellings and romance itself has to have a happy ending in order to be considered romance. I just saw a path to a happy ending that would have been realistic. But not as easy as it came off, if that makes any sense. And so for me, it was like, I would have appreciated if this actually was done a different way, but it was easily resolved. But again, that's romance, but specifically fairy tale romance has to have that bells and whistles and beautiful stars kind of happening. Everything is smooth and easy, and it's the genre, which is understandable. It's just like my personal thing. I like realism. I like a little bit more grit. So for me, it's like this realistic, harder path for the characters. I felt like would have been a little better, but that's me personally, and that's a me issue. So that's not a complaint on the book, the author, or the genre. It's just me personally, and it's one of my little pet peeves about romance and the genre as it's supposed to be called and marketed in general, because I like romances that are more realistic and gritty. And yes, they are romances. You can fight me if you want. But either way, fights aside, I loved this book so much. And again, those complaints were like, it wasn't long enough just because I loved it so much. I wanted more. The ending just came suddenly, which was amazing for the author to be able to do that. And then just little bit too easy for some of the things. But I did enjoy the twist that came with the easy thing, so it wasn't bad. It was just, I saw a different path that could have been a little bit more realistic, but it had to fit to the genre, so that's completely understandable. Nothing bad, just saying that was my only pet peeve, which was my problem, not anything against the author or the genre or the book or anything like that. And if I read the other books in the series, I'm assuming it's the same thing because, like I said, fairy tale romance itself is pretty cut and paste, but specifically fairy tale retellings, it's a fairy tale. It has to have that. So yeah, overall, like I loved this book. It's refreshing to read a fantasy book with so much stuff that I'm like, oh, I love this. I love this. I love this. And it's not just my own book. Like, it's just, I loved it so much. I loved the characters. I liked the characterization, and I cannot express to you guys how much I loved the second chance aspect of this. I don't know if it's because this is my first time reading the trope or if it's just because Angie did this in a masterful way, but if that's the case, then she has set the standard really high for any other second chance romances. Like, good luck beating her, because this was epic. Like, the setup, the what happened to them before, I'm like, man, I gotta do this. Like, I have to do a second chance romance trope now, because it's just so powerful and impacting, and what both of the characters endured and went through, and it added this mystery to it too. So it didn't just feel like a fantasy romance or a fairy tale retelling. It felt like a mystery. It had this mystery, and it just hooked me in. And maybe that's part of another reason why it hooked me in, because I love mystery thrillers. But it had that aspect to it that you want to know what's happened. You want to unravel the mystery, and you want to unravel the past and the secrets and the lies, and like, you just got to keep going. And I felt like it was revealed and unraveled in a satisfying way. And it was revealed in a way that I didn't predict, honestly, because honestly with this one, I didn't try to predict it, because there were so many elements, and like, it's fantasy, so there's magic thrown in. That adds an extra element to solving mysteries that makes it a little bit more harder to predict. Unlike with like real life, you have like the red herrings and certain suspects and all that stuff. But I loved it so much. Overall, 5 stars, 100%. Like, I wish I could give it 6 stars, because it's on a level higher than the last 2 5-star books that I read. Like, I love Daisy Darker and I love The Other World, but those are still set in the real world. And y'all know me, I love me some fantasy. And so for me, a fantasy written well, especially one like this where she's writes similarly to how I treat my characters, like, of course, it's going to be on a higher standard, a higher bar than real life books. And that's nothing against the real life books. I'm a sucker for a good fantasy, especially when you throw in a brooding male hero with a tragic past and some epic magic and just all of this angst to his character. It's just, of course, that's going to be a whole nother level. So I really wish I could do 6 stars, but the rating system is what it is. So I love this book. And once again, this is the Midnight Prince by Angie Grigaliunas. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name. And it's a Cinderella retelling, part of the Once Upon a Prince series. I will have a link to this book and the Once Upon a Prince series down below in the comments. And I highly recommend this to everybody. I know you guys have been asking me, since I reviewed A Court of Thorns and Roses, you guys were asking me to review more clean books, and I did with Daisy Darker, which does have some a little bit scary, kind of freaky elements that aren't really that big of a deal to me, but they may be sensitive to you guys. And then The Other World, which was super clean. But if you guys prefer fantasy, then I highly recommend this, because this is squeaky clean, but still no less amazing. And it was still amazing and gritty and fun and angsty and mysterious and amazing. And I wish this cover would come over clearly. There we go. That's a little bit better, maybe. Or maybe I'm just making an idiot of myself. But it's a really gorgeous cover. And honestly, I'm kind of interested to see if the other books are similar. Because I would love if they were. But I have a feeling it's just like... I have a feeling that Angie is just a particular writer that's really similar to me. But I'm really hoping that the themes of this is kind of like a theme for the series, because it's like Once Upon a Prince. It's how the princes get their happy endings is kind of what the premise of the series is. So maybe there's themes that'll continue like that throughout the series. We'll see if I decide to read them or not. But yeah, I hope you guys liked this review. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you liked my review of Once Upon a Prince, then check out my review of The Other World by Abby Emmons. That was a really good book. Contemporary, but still amazing 5-star review. And I'll explain everything, why, and give you all the details and all the writing techniques and stuff that I learned from her in that video. So check it out. You don't want to miss it.